Two areas of interest emerging in the Eastern Pacific on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for July 5th. The tropics remain quiet today, and we are unclassified on our cyclone operations status. 27 storms have formed so far this year around the world, and we have two other emerging systems that could develop in the Eastern Pacific later this week into early next week. First of all, the Atlantic. It's day 35 of hurricane season, and whilst we've not got any areas designated, you can see a few areas that are popping off over the Yucatan Peninsula and over the Greater Antilles. But nothing else in the Atlantic right now. In the Eastern Pacific, we've got these two areas of interest. We've given a moderate chance and a low chance on the one behind it. On day 53 of hurricane season here, it does look like the first system could end up forming and becoming a rather broad tropical cyclone, with the one behind it being slightly smaller, almost an Adrian Beatrice repeat actually, but we expect that they'll both remain out to sea. In the Western Pacific, nothing active here right now. It's looking very quiet, as a matter of fact. Not really many waves that are developing out there either. Indian Ocean also looking fairly subdued, but we do have a few areas that are showing promise, but nothing in terms of tropical cyclone genesis. Of course, the southwestern tip of Myanmar getting a few thunderstorms over there right now, as is a few parts of India. Well, let's take a look at satellite imagery in the last 24 hours. Look out for any of the red spots here, which will denote high amounts of precipitation, and a few of those have occurred along the eastern coast of India, as a matter of fact, with the monsoon in full swing. Elsewhere, it's been actually a pretty quiet 24-hour period, but maybe Central America getting quite a bit of rain there as well. So here's a recent view of the Eastern Pacific, and you can see there's a lot of disorganized thunderstorms occurring mainly over the water, and you can also see a really interesting looking storm over the Yucatan Peninsula. You can also still see the remnants of Adrian just about over there, although it's lost its circulation. It's just a massive cloud. But yeah, over the southern Gulf of Mexico there, you can see a very disjointed area there. It's not really going to develop into a tropical cyclone, but it is producing quite a lot of rainfall by the looks of things, certainly underneath that convection. A secondary area over Hispaniola and part of Puerto Rico that will also be producing a lot of rain right now. A lot of moisture there as well, which is completely different to the central Atlantic, which is extremely dry right now, as you can see there on that imagery. But in general, it's the western areas that are increasing in their moisture, and I think that will continue in the Eastern Pacific over the next few days as we look out for these potential two new systems that could develop and form. Not really seeing any rotation at all at the moment over there in the Eastern Pacific, but you can sort of see the general area that these two will form out of, a massive soup of storms over there right now. And sea surface temperatures are really there for both of these systems too, above 30 degrees Celsius over a large part of the Eastern Pacific. The Atlantic even warmer in the Gulf of Mexico, pushing 32 degrees near Louisiana and Florida, and also down near Cuba. Out to sea looking good as well, and the Gulf Stream really picking up there with very warm temperatures as well. The Eastern Atlantic is getting up to 26 degrees too. Western Pacific also looking good with warm sea surface temperatures across the board, up to and above 30 degrees in a few spots, especially around the Philippines. And if you draw a line from northern Luzon eastward and westward, I suppose, warm temperatures all along that line there as well, out to the Mariana Islands. Bay of Bengal looking good too, and the Arabian Sea obviously not so much, with the trade winds really blowing those temperatures down, but the minor seas around the Arabian Peninsula extremely warm. Southwest Indian Ocean obviously cool now in the off season. In the Australian region, it's a similar story, with the Gulf of Carpentaria quite cool there, around 26 degrees maximum. And the South Pacific looks like this, with not much change since our last bulletin. Looking at the anomalies, red is above average and blue is below average, well below still in a few spots of the eastern Pacific west of the Baja California Peninsula, but it is above average in the main spot for formation south of Mexico. Gulf of Mexico also looking warm compared to average. Eastern Atlantic is well above average, pushing 3 degrees. There is a slight cool pool near Bermuda though, but in general the Atlantic is pretty warm. Western Pacific is near average, the South China Sea is around 1 to 2 degrees above. Oceanic heat content continues to build in the Atlantic Ocean, particularly in the Caribbean Sea and spilling out into the Gulf of Mexico, also near the Bahamas now as well. In the Eastern Pacific it seems to be decreasing a little bit generally, but still looking okay, and the Western Pacific certainly has got a lot of energy near the Philippine Islands, extending outwards all the way to Guam and beyond. So here's the GFS computer models for the next 5 days. Short range, we're looking out for these 2 systems in the Eastern Pacific, both of which now form within that 5-day period from the GFS, and you can see both of them developing there. The first one starting further south and then turning northeast slightly and then turning westwards, a very broad system. The second one forming further west at first, but then it gets pushed eastwards again by the other system, and then it starts to turn west again when it starts to move. Both of those getting to mature tropical storm strength in just 5 days. Rainfall expectations look like this over the same period, actually over a 7-day period I should say. Generally over Mexico we're not looking at huge amounts of rainfall, and really not much of it will be associated with these storms, but in general we will be seeing a little bit of an enhancement in rainfall over the area, and we could see maximums over some hilly areas of around 8 inches, particularly near the coast over the mountains, getting up to about 8 inches maximum. That's 200 millimeters, and an area over there in Oaxaca as well, not marked a similar amount. Out to sea though, very warm not warm SSTs, but they are warm, but the rainfall we're expecting close to 28 inches in one of those spots where that second storm might be forming. Now it's still speculative at the moment, and that could change with later forecasts. Medium range then, we can see the continuation of these 2 systems, and looks like both of them might reach hurricane status on the GFS, only marginally, so it doesn't look like the first one will be as strong as Adrian, but actually that second one there on the GFS through day 10 does get a little bit of momentum, and that gets towards category 2 status towards the end of that 10-day period, but it is moving out to sea thankfully, and it doesn't look like either of those storms will produce tropical storm force winds on land. And that's all the serious stuff done with, nothing elsewhere. Scan the barcode and take a look at the Force 13 merch store, where we have all of our usual merch items, and are still waiting for Hone t-shirts, as well as full season and individual storm animations on request. Fantastic. Well, in the Scilly range, this is day 10 to 15. We continue to watch that hurricane over there, and that first one ahead of it just about reaches Hawaii as a remnant. Not much left of it by then, but that second system continues to push through the Eastern Pacific out towards the Central Pacific area, and does get a little bit more momentum towards the end actually. I'm very skeptical about that because sea surface temperatures are pretty chilly out over where these storms will be heading west of Baja California. We saw on the sea surface temperatures earlier, they are struggling this year out over there. Could there be a third storm near the end of that run? Probably not. Western Pacific over the same period, this is day 10 to 15, and the GFS is showing some signals of activity. As a matter of fact, not 1 but 2 tropical cyclones forming, but once again got to air a lot of caution over this because we didn't see this at all in yesterday's update, and these models can be quite fickle and change their minds very quickly. But it's a very large monsoonal low that develops in the South China Sea and becomes a very broad tropical storm, and gets maybe a little bit stronger than that as well. Huge thing there, mammoth cyclone reaching the coast of Vietnam, and that second system that forms way out to sea to the east. You can talk about all of that on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13 for tropical and general weather chat, with over 3,500 members from around the world. Very long time ago, 90 years to the day, July 5th, 1933, when we had Hurricane 2, which was on its way to making landfall in the Tampico area of Mexico, pictured with damage from the storm and flooding. It peaked on this day over the Gulf of Mexico, but it's most well known for its impacts in Trinidad, which it moved through as a strong tropical storm / hurricane. We also had 2 tropical storms active in the western Pacific on this day, one of them near the Mariana Islands, the other near the coast of Japan. Back to today, and it's a whole different world. The next name on the Atlantic naming list is Don. The Eastern Pacific's next name is Calvin, and in the Central Pacific it's still Hone. There's another little note on that on this day feature. It was 2L, but it was actually the 4th system, because we've recently found 2 extra tropical depressions that formed in June of 1933. In the Western Pacific, the next name is Talim this year. In the North Indian Ocean, it's Tej. And in the Southern Hemisphere, the Southwest Indian Ocean recently changed over to its new list. The first name is Alvaro. The Australian region, Jasper's next, and in the South Pacific, it's Lola. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.